my last video about Hazbin Hotel, I discussed how Hazbin Hotel depicted Satan and Lucifer. So this time, I thought I would look into how the show depicts God. I have made another video that discusses the angels specifically, so maybe check that video out before continuing with this one.
Ooh, gift baskets.
You are made of stupid.
Though I want to preface this video by saying this is not meant to be a deep theological discussion about the concept of God and whether or not they exist. I only bring this up because the comment section of my Lucifer and Satan video dissolved into a discussion about the existence of Satan and Lucifer. It's not a bad thing, but it wasn't really discussing what I was talking about in the video all that much. They were like, no way, and I was like, Yahweh. It's probably funny to like 2 people watching. It's more about whether or not they exist in the show, and whether or not I feel that the way that God has been handled in this show was done successfully or not. Though obviously Hazbin Hotel is heavily influenced by Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and Satanism. Though technically speaking, Satanism is not inherently Abrahamic, it can intersect with Abrahamic traditions in certain forms, so I'm going to include it here for very obvious reasons because this show is set in hell and Satan is a thing in this universe and so is Lucifer, so yeah, it makes sense. It's not going to be a blatant copy of everything that happens in the Bible. I mean, in the first season, they refer to Adam as the first soul that entered heaven, even though in season 2, his son Abel is introduced.
Sure got me here, didn't it? Right, Sarah?
He was the first human soul in heaven.
And if you're not aware, Abel was murdered by his brother Cain, and therefore it's assumed that Abel was the first soul to pass on into the afterlife. Basically what I'm saying, don't expect Hazbin Hotel to stick with the events of the Bible verbatim. When analysing a show like this, it's very difficult not to also discuss theology because obviously the story pulls a lot from these religions. And I am obviously not an expert on Abrahamic religions or theology, so please correct me in the comments below if I get anything wrong. So although we're not analysing the supernatural in this video, we are going to take a look at how the study of theology and the study of the supernatural influenced the writing structure of this show. I hope that makes sense. Basically what I'm saying is, although I am a practicing Christian myself, I am trying to keep these videos as secular as possible, because whenever you start talking about God, someone somewhere is going to get offended somehow. And to those people I say, welcome to the internet where even breathing wrong can get you in trouble. And as Ricky Gervais says, just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. From a writing standpoint, it's interesting to me to have a show that's set in hell have Satan and Lucifer, but when it comes to how heaven is depicted, God isn't really a thing in this show, at least not in season 1. So let's dive into how Hazbin Hotel depicts God. Or doesn't depict God.
Once upon a time, there was a glowing city protected by golden gates, known as heaven.
Hey, look at St. Peter spinning around. Whee!
It was ruled by beings of pure light, angels that worshipped good and shielded all from evil.
So, is the speaker of God meant to be this good thing that is mentioned in season 1? Do the angels worship the speaker of God?
From the dust of earth, they created Adam and Lilith.
So in my experience of watching this show, I just accepted that God just doesn't exist in this universe. God being an abstract entity, transcending physical reality and existing beyond the limitations of time, space, and material form, helps to imply the omnipresence and omniscience and immaterial nature that a lot of religions believe them to have. Though the question of whether God is abstract or concrete is a constant debate theologically, it's also a debate within the show because it's never really made clear if God is abstract or concrete in the show. The duality of God being abstract or concrete in this show raises a hell of a lot of questions, especially about the nature of divinity in this show. And then they introduce this character.
Here she comes to wreck the day!
I'm known as the Speaker of God.
Oh,
That's weird. I always imagined the voice of God to sound more like Morgan Freeman.
Who are you?
I'm the one, creator of the heavens and the earth, Alpha and Omega.
Oh, I see where this is going.
I'm God.
Well, it was nice to meet you, God. Thank you for the Grand Canyon, and good luck with the apocalypse. Oh, and by the way, you suck!
Her role in the story, at least the name implies this anyway, is that she relays God's will. And here's the singular, unprecedented testimony of a redeemed sinner in Serpentius, places them at a critical position between the divine and the beings of both heaven and hell. This is a being that the characters in heaven clearly see as the closest entity to God that they will ever encounter. Okay, so you have a character called the Speaker of God, which implies to me that God is a character in this series, or at least some kind of abstract concept in this show, and yet is not the one responsible for creation. Instead, the angels are. Trying to analyze a God character in this show is incredibly problematic because it kind of contradicts itself, as well as contradicting the Abrahamic influences that this show has in the first place. When Sarah prays, is she praying to the Speaker of God, or is she praying to God itself? Sadly, with the introduction of this character, the Speaker of God, she's presented as a character that possesses and demonstrates awareness of distant events. She is aware of events that happened before, that are happening now, and events that are going to happen. She already knows Serpentius' former name, animates past events exactly as how they occurred in season 1. If this is the case, wouldn't this mean that she was aware of the purges happening? Why didn't she do anything to stop it? When you base an entire show on religions that are monotheistic, or religions that believe that one god is the only, or at least the most dominant deity, and yet not have God in your show in season 1, but then suddenly introduce a character named the Speaker of God with absolutely no build-up whatsoever, by the way. I'm gonna use a new word I just learned to describe how I feel about this. Paradoxical! Yeah, learning new words make my brain go burr. And it also means that I can make a random Pirates of Penzance reference.
Paradox, most ingenious paradox.
But then also have the angels in your universe be the ones that created the world, implying that they are godlike. If the Speaker of God is meant to be above the seraphim, this would mean that this version of heaven has multiple godlike figures, and yet has one god so-called above them all. Gods in this case being defined as creatures that can create life out of nothing.
Is that?
It seemed to me it was established that Hazbin Hotel's universe is meant to be polytheistic, as in there's not one god. In fact, God isn't even a thing, but instead multiple angels are responsible for the creation. So therefore, to me, it would make sense that these angels are essentially gods. So therefore, the humans on Earth would worship multiple godlike figures, like Greek mythology or Norse mythology, for example, that have multiple gods, not just one. And yet in Hell of a Boss, at least in the pilot anyway, Blitz, Moxie and Millie go through a portal to the living world and end up in a church.
Get out of my church!
Hey, look at that, it's a crucifix! You know, the symbol of Christianity, which would imply that in this universe, Jesus is a thing. You know what, that would actually make a lot of sense since Saint Peter is in heaven. Saint Peter being one of Jesus' disciples and the first pope. Biblically speaking, Jesus gave Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven, which is why Saint Peter is often depicted as heaven's doorman. There's even more reason why it's so confusing that God is not a thing in this show, because if God is not a thing in this show, neither is his son Jesus. And yet you have one of his disciples. Pick a lane. I feel like a lot of the show's narrative issues could be solved really easily if they weren't based on Abrahamic religions. Being secular and set in limbo instead of heaven and hell would definitely allow for more creative freedom, and that would mean that adding a character who is literally called the Speaker of God wouldn't feel so badly out of place. This is a problem because from a writing standpoint, when the majority of your characters in your story are allegorical like they are in Hazbin Hotel, it not only limits your creative freedom but also makes it very easy for people to figure out where your story is going. I mean, fan theory videos are popular for a very good reason, or makes it very obvious what the creator's stance on certain topics are. I mean, characters may be perfectly well-rounded and very much individualized characters, but they're also very closely linked to a certain concept and are used allegorically as a way of talking about that very concept. And just because the author might point out that the allegory wasn't what was intended, that doesn't mean that it isn't there anyway. The Speaker of God feels more like a character that is a device instead of a character in her own right. Even though we only see her for a few minutes in one episode of season 2, it's clear that she is very much the all-loving hero trope sort of character, representing a deep spiritual love for everyone even if she only met them 5 seconds ago. She brings an aura of kindness and calm, but the Speaker of God is also essentially all-powerful bystander. Story breaking? Nah. Another example of this kind of trope would be Q from Star Trek, especially his appearance in the narrative for Voyager. I know, ew, Trekkies. In Star Trek Voyager, the starship Voyager is hurled from the Alpha Quadrant to the Delta Quadrant, and the journey home was going to take the crew 70 Earth years. Q is an extra-dimensional being of unknown origin who possesses immeasurable power over time, space, the laws of physics, and reality itself, being capable of altering it to his whim. He is essentially a god in the Star Trek universe. He is initially presented as a cosmic force that judges humanity to see if it is becoming a threat to the universe and whether or not it should be destroyed. So in a way, Q is pretty much the polar opposite of the Speaker of God here, since she is advocating for Pentius's continual existence in heaven, whereas Q would probably be advocating for ending his existence purely for his own amusement. The question is, why didn't Q, who is an all-powerful, omnipresent being, just help the Voyager get home?
Not that I don't appreciate it, but this will only take a few years off our journey. Why not send us all the way?
What sort of an example would I be setting for my son if I did all the work for you?
Though in Q's case it makes sense for him not to do that because he is more of a trickster god and is very unpredictable, which justifies his refusal of helping Voyager in the first place. His character and personality was pre-established, but it would also completely negate the show's premise if Q did send Voyager home. Also, Janeway isn't a character that looks for a quick fix. She's definitely someone that prefers to earn things through hard work and determination, not through divine intervention. It's just really interesting to me to showcase Q alongside the Speaker of God because they are both essentially godlike characters but both operate very differently within the stories they are in. The main difference though is that Q has been in Star Trek since the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and though he had no foreshadowing, there were characters similar to Q in the original Star Trek series, so you could argue that that was also foreshadowing, but the Speaker of God just comes out of nowhere here, and to me, when it's already pre-established that this world was created by angels, I would have thought that we would have somehow seen some clues of the Speaker of God in the intro, but I don't think we do. In other words, to me, Q represents a godlike character being written right, and the Speaker of God represents when a godlike character is written wrong. Excuse me for a moment, I have to put in my obligatory Discord for My Little Pony reference in here.
This doesn't make sense.
Makes sense? Oh, what fun is there in making sense?
It's like it's a part of some kind of ancient ritual. Anytime you talk about John Delancey, you have to make a Discord reference. Ew, bronies, ugh. Though Q in Star Trek is chaotic neutral, his actions provoke philosophical discussions about morality, existence, and the nature of humanity. And I feel like if the Speaker of God had some build-up, then her eventual appearance would further provoke philosophical discussions as well. But instead, I feel like she just came out of nowhere, said that Pentius has atoned and therefore belongs in heaven now, end of discussion. Talking about the ethical and moral perspectives of characters in a story that is meant to be about redemption, I feel is very important. And I also feel it's even more important to do that with godlike characters like the Speaker of God, because even godlike characters need to have structure and rules in how they operate within a story. If they don't, or it's left ambiguous, then it can be story breaking. Like, if the Speaker of God existed in this world this entire time, why didn't she do anything to stop the exterminations? She clearly knew about them because she's omniscient and omnipresent. When godlike characters exist in a story and don't take action at any point to prevent disasters like the extermination, for example, and yet don't fix the problems facing their universe, it does beg a lot of questions. Might it be because if they did, it would break an obstructive code of conduct, maybe? Or it would end up destroying free will? Or maybe if she did actually use her powers to fix things, it would draw the attention of something far more powerful than her, as is implied in the opening sequence with the good and evil shapes we see represented in the opener. She is an ambiguous, angelic beauty. She's also very vague, never giving direct answers to Sarah on how she should deal with Hell or Pentius, now that she knows that redemption is possible, which is something that the Speaker of God would have known this entire time anyway, and instead tells Sarah that she must look within herself and make her own choice. Though she clearly respects everyone's freedom of choice, she has also indirectly caused a hell of a lot of problems for heaven and hell. And it doesn't seem like she acknowledged Lute's impending fall from sanity, though she does listen to everything Lute has to say and does seem a little concerned at her behavior. She doesn't do anything about it. It's like the Speaker is more concerned and overjoyed with everyone being able to choose for themselves instead of being concerned with the eternal consequences of said choices. The design for the Speaker of God implies that there might be some kind of connection to the Goetia demons in Halivabos, but apparently according to VivziePop, the resemblance is simply an artistic coincidence than an intended connection.
Speaker of God is not a Goetia just because they're a specific breed. She's meant to be a phoenix, so she has a lot of that mystical bird energy. And I think part of it's just my style, but I also think thematically it kind of makes sense because the Goetias in my lore are kind of like the creation of Lucifer. I feel like it makes sense because he came from heaven. Her similarities to them, I think spiritually makes sense because they kind of technically originated from an angelic place.
I really hate how I had to watch a bloody TikTok video from VivziePop to get answers as to why the Speaker of God was designed the way she was. And I'm sorry, but when in this show was it confirmed that Lucifer created the Goetia demons? I'm definitely no expert in demonology, but I don't think Lucifer is traditionally credited with the creation of the Goetia demons in demonology at any point. But even if he was, I don't remember it ever being stated in the show itself that the Goetia demons were created by Lucifer. I think the closest thing we get to implying that this might be a thing is during a flashback with Charlie seeing him conjure up a six-wing duck thing. This is not enough to come to that conclusion. This is again something we learn from supplemental material provided by VivziePop and other creators involved in the show. Yes, this does make it canon, but in my personal opinion, if something is not made clear in the show, might it be literally said or shown subliminally in the background somehow? It doesn't really make it clear. And though Vivsy says this does spiritually make sense, I do still feel that the Speaker of God is a bird-like creature similar to the designs of the Grisha demons is pure coincidence, and is perhaps just a subconscious stylistic choice. Which is a real shame, because if it was more cemented in the show that Lucifer did create the Grisha demons, then it would make sense that the Speaker of God and the Grisha demons would look similar, since Lucifer technically came from heaven, so therefore would have some heavenly attributes imbued into the things he creates. He is a fallen angel after all, and if angels like Emily can create things from nothing, then so can Lucifer. It makes sense. I just wish that him being the creator of the Grisha demons was made clear. Why is it, and I've said this several times before in my videos, we have to hunt down supplemental materials to get answers to basic world building questions like this? It just really pisses me off. Interviews that Vivsy was in to get some explanation as to why this character is designed this way. So why is this character so story-breaking to me? It's a massive shift in Hazbin lore. The Speaker of God is essentially Hazbin's version of Enoch or Metatron. It also begs the question, if that is the case, the Speaker of God is not just an angel, but is a human soul that ascended into heaven and was transformed into the overwhelmingly powerful angel Metatron. If the Speaker of God is meant to be Metatron, that's even more reason as to give this character foreshadowing for their eventual appearance. I just feel like introducing a character like this causes the show to lose its focus entirely. Like I said before in previous videos, this show is not about redemption as was initially promised in the pilot and established in episode 1. It's not about that, it's about reformation. It's moved beyond this simple extermination of damned souls in hell and is now a discussion about worthiness and the true nature of God's justice. It's like I've said before, these characters that exist in this world are learning how their world works at the same time as the audience does, and while at the same time realizing that the rules of the world are being broken. But you know what would make it more coherent if we understood what the rules were first before they were broken? I mean, it's established in season 1 that these guys have no clue how souls get into heaven in the first place.
What do you think it takes to get into heaven?
Act selfless, don't steal, stick it to the man.
Sure got me here, didn't it?
Adding the Speaker of God doesn't really solve any story issues. If anything, it just breaks it even more. The existence of Satan in this universe is, in my opinion, contingent upon the existence of God, as he is often seen as a created being who rebelled against divine authority. Without God, Satan would not exist, and I'd argue neither would Lucifer. So why did Hazbin Hotel decide to have the angels be what is essentially meant to be God? They're the ones that created Earth. They're the ones that shunned Lucifer. They're the ones that started the exterminations of the sinners. It would have been better if they made it clear that the angels are gods in the show, especially when you have a villain in season 2 that is pursuing godhood.
We have the chance to be more than overlords. We have the chance to be gods.
I bring Vox up in this video because Vox definitely has a god complex, embodying the allure and danger of unchecked power. So the V's are overlords in hell, and they want to pursue godhood, yay, though I'm not entirely sure why, because you literally have Lucifer powering a weapon that was able to be taken out by a handful of overlords, and the weapon itself was able to take out the shield that the Seraphim set up, and if the Seraphim are meant to be the god-like creatures you're wanting to overthrow, does this not imply that the powers of the overlords kinda trump the Seraphim? Because as far as I know, that's the only godlike creatures they're aware of. But then he refers to heaven as the kingdom of God.
Once we get up there, the shining kingdom of God.
Why does this show contradict itself so often? When it's already been pre-established that God technically doesn't exist in this universe? Why do I get the feeling that this character was brought in to balance out that idea of characters chasing godhood? The problem is, she was never mentioned prior to season 2 and only appears in one episode, and even though it was Vox's intention to overthrow God, quote unquote, from heaven, the Speaker of God and Vox never have a scene together. And nothing ever happens to the Speaker of God when the weapon is fired at heaven. It just felt like the setup was going to be Vox eventually encountering the Speaker of God, but it never happens. At least that's what I was hoping for, and I was very disappointed that we never see her again. So to me, it really does feel like she popped up out of nowhere and then disappeared, never to be seen again. God characters like this offer a unique lens for us as viewers to explore complex ideas such as morality, fate, and the human condition. You would think that this would be a continual thread from start to finish in a show that is about the human condition, or at least is meant to be about the human condition. This show was meant to be about redemption after all, but that's become a footnote in the plot at this point. It does feel like the Speaker of God character was introduced almost only to allow Pentius a platform to talk about his story. When they were talking about whether or not redemption was even possible for sinners, and Emily and Charlie singing about if hell is forever then heaven must be a lie, she didn't step in at that point, did she? Vivzy is definitely a creator that wants to give the fans what they want, and seems to forget about creative integrity of the product she's making. In season 1, God isn't a thing. It was the angels that created the human race, not God. Season 2, God is suddenly a thing because we have the Speaker of God. But then even Hell of a Boss contradicts what's established in Hazbin Hotel when it comes to whether God is a thing or not. In episode 4 of season 1 of Hell of a Boss, the cherubs refer to God's creation.
Look around, love. God's gift of nature is a wonder to behold.
But then having a character literally introduce themselves as the Speaker of God implies that God does exist, or that this character is God, or is the one responsible for the creation of Earth. It becomes even more of a problem to analyze this kind of stuff, because some people who believe in the Bible do take things in a very literal sense, and some do see this show as blasphemy instead of a rejection of religious dogma, which as a Christian myself I find kind of hilarious, because blasphemy is the act or offense of speaking sacrilegiously about God or sacred things. Kinda hard to do that when a show doesn't even have God in it, but instead has a character called the Speaker of God. This was probably done to avoid the show being called blasphemous. Yeah, that didn't really work, did it? I mean, I think Blitz put it a bit more poetically than I ever could.
Well, Christ on a stick, I guess there is a God.
Does the appearance of the Speaker of God break the story of Hazbin Hotel? In my opinion, yes. Like, she's genuinely a very appealing character from the get-go, and that is definitely a presence that we need in a story like this. I just wish that there was some foreshadowing and build-up to her appearance. I don't think that's too much to ask. When the Speaker comforts Sarah, the Speaker explains how forgiveness can only exist when one accepts the weight of their actions and makes effort to atone for them, which is what Pentius did, and therefore that is why he was able to get to heaven. When Sarah realizes that the exterminations were not necessary because sinners are capable of change, the Speaker would have known this already, so why didn't she do anything about this or stop Sarah from doing these exterminations? I do like that the Speaker encourages Sarah to face her doubts, because questioning faith is a natural part of growth. Learning to live with your mistakes and continue moving forward with honesty and purpose is something this speaker is encouraging Sarah to do, and by extension would be encouraging everyone in heaven to do as well. I would have liked more time spent between Sarah and the speaker discussing how the afterlife works or doesn't work. But no, we have to have a song instead because this show is basically a rock opera. But what are your thoughts about the speaker of God as depicted in this world? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Mad Munchkin, stay creative.